Yeah, yeah. Ball so hard, you better believe me, it's scary. It's basketball at the bar with Calvin and Barry. So put a tip in the jar, cause these dudes can really fill it up. Whether it's buckets you need or just a beer in a cup. We're here for fresh conversations and some delicious libations. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. My boys got you covered like you being guarded by payers. From the glove to the claw and everyone else in between. Calvin and Barry got everything that you need. So sit back, relax, because we're starting the show. It's basketball at the bar. Grab your drinks and let's go. Yeah. Grab a drink and let's go. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Calvin and Barry. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Let's get it.
What up, ballers? Welcome to Basketball at the Bar. Join us live every weekday for the best NBA podcast here on YouTube, where the takes are hot and the drinks are cold. There's no dress code, and you can take us wherever you go. So pull up a stool, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. This is Basketball at the Bar. Grab your drinks, and let's go. Calvin, was that better or worse than the first one?
It was much better.
Okay, good. I forgot to hit the live button, so we're doing a second take here. But welcome in, everybody. Mike, what's up? Good to see you guys. Thank you all for joining us on another episode. It's an exciting Thursday. We're going to recap yesterday's game, the unfortunate injury to Steph Curry. We're going to talk about the Suns' COVID outbreak during Game 7 of the round before this. We're going to talk about LeBron and his ownership hopes for the NBA and a potential city that he's named. We're going to go over the top 5 draft picks here in order as long as like one of these mock drafts go. And then we're going to finish with
keyword one of these mock drafts.
Yeah, because they're all different right now. So I think we're going to go for Tankathon. Also, real quick, so you guys know, not sure about tomorrow's scheduled broadcast yet. Calvin and I will be doing some traveling. So all you got to do is go to Twitter and follow B-Ball at the Bar, and you'll get all your updates on every show. You can also hit that notification bell on YouTube, and you'll get notified. But welcome in, Calvin. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Barry.
How's your morning so far?
Great.
Good?
Went to the Civic Center again. I can't get enough. I'm addicted again, all over again. It's like being reborn a little bit, you know?
That's awesome. All right. Let's jump right into it, right? Should we talk about Game 3 first?
Yeah.
That's the freshest in my mind.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about it. So, Game 3 in Boston, first game in Boston in this series, the Boston Celtics win 116-110. They now lead the series 2-1. Draymond Green gets ejected, like I predicted.
Fouled out, didn't he?
Well, same thing.
Okay.
He got ejected.
When you say he gets ejected,
sorry,
that's a very different.
He fouled out and was ejected for having 6 personal fouls.
Yes.
Just like I predicted on this show yesterday. Steph Curry is injured late in the game. We'll talk about that. And Jason Tatum is finally bouncing back to his normal self. 26 points for him, 27 for Jaylen Brown, who's looking like potentially the MVP of this series. 24 for Marcus Smart, like Calvin predicted. And Boston wins this game. Calvin, what are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are the Warriors are in trouble. Boston, I mean, again, this was a home game for them, so we all expected the others, the Al Horfords, the Marcus Smarts, to play much better. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, particularly Jaylen Brown, were phenomenal in this game. They turned the Warriors into a jump shooting team. They completely flipped the script on what has been status quo so far for the first 2 games. They absolutely dominated in the paint. And a big reason why is they decided, I don't know if Robert Williams is just much more healthy now or Boston is doubling down on what their best lineup is. But we saw, them be hesitant to want to play both Williams and Horford together at times. Mm-hmm. They stuck with that in this Game 3, and it really, really worked for them. They were great inside. They dominated on the offensive glass as well, which is something that the Warriors have had the advantage in so far in this series. And they took care of the ball, which is what we said was their biggest goal for this game. Only 12 turnovers. They're now 14-2 in the postseason when they turn the ball over 15 times or less. So the Warriors are in trouble. Because Wiggins and Klay Thompson actually played pretty well in this game.
Yep.
But again, They turned them into jump shooters. They completely walled off the paint from Golden State, which is a big part of what they do offensively. And, now with Curry, who has been the only real bright spot for this team in this finals, being hurt, he says it's not as bad as the first time and all that stuff, and he's going to play. But, we'll have to see how he looks in Game 4.
Yeah, and he missed 12 games at the end of the regular season dealing with this same injury that happened against the Boston Celtics. He says it's not as bad. What does that really mean, right? Like, if it's half as bad, does that mean he misses 6 games?
Well, and even if it was as bad or worse, he's probably not going to say that right after Game 3 at a press conference on national TV. That why would you give away that information? And
the last time your team was in the finals, you watched Kevin Durant go down with an Achilles injury after he had been playing injured. You saw Klay Thompson go down with a knee injury after he had been playing injured. You can't sit out and say, my foot hurts. You can't.
No.
What an amazing game this was. Boston got out to a hot start early. Golden State comes back. The third quarter got me a little worried, Calvin. I was kind of like, uh-oh, here we go again. This is just like Game 1 and just like Game 2. Golden State controls the third quarter. They play extremely well, but Boston was able to withstand the punches and come back and have an amazing fourth quarter, only allowing 11 points and scoring 23. They basically closed out this game. The last 5 minutes of it was almost a no contest. Boston was scoring every time they needed to down the court. We saw Curry go down. We saw Draymond Green foul out. And Boston just runs away with the game.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. Draymond Green, man.
Another triple single. He's really hurting them right now. Really hurting them a lot. Defensively, he's always been really good. I think he's starting to lose a step or two. He doesn't seem to have the same elevation off the floor, which for an undersized shot blocker is a big problem, right? Yeah. And also just his mentality is still the same. I mean, you watch some plays during this game, the dude looks like he's playing football out there. He forearm shivers Tatum in the back of the head on the free throw line going for a rebound. And then he pretty much tackles Marcus Smart in the open court during that scrum that Curry gets hurt on. Yeah.
It got called for one foul there out of the two. I mean, look, this guy he had some bad turnovers in this game as well. He is not the same Draymond Green as the team that won 3 out of 4 championships.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely been 4 years for him, age-wise.
Right.
The stat line is funny. 1 block, 2 points, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. I wish it was 5 turnovers and 6 personal fouls. He could have had 1 through 6 handled there. Oh, and 0 steals. So you can throw the 0 in there too. But yeah, for me, all the athletic stuff, the getting older stuff aside, Draymond Green just seems to me to be emotionally out of the game. I don't know if it's the fans or the players or it's something internally that's happening with him, but his motivation seems to be more of like wanting to create contact and get in altercations than he cares about scoring or winning a basketball game. Like, don't get me wrong, he wants to win. He loves to win, but it seems like when he's on the court, his primary focus is to agitate, to irritate, and just to like get into it with everybody that he can.
Well, if you're a guy that's aging and losing some of your physical abilities, but you've always been that guy, the instigator, that stuff is going to come out more and more, right?
It works when you can back it up.
It does. And in all fairness to Draymond, he's got a really difficult task in this finals, playing as, at times, the Warriors center against guys like Al Horford and Robert Williams. It's a difficult matchup for him, but I think the Celtics are letting Draymond and the Warriors play right into their hands right now.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to what I said before this series started, in that when Boston is at full strength, I just feel like they're the better team. And that's what it looked like yesterday. The Warriors made their runs. They had the great third quarter. Steph gets hot. Clay gets hot for a little bit. And, because it's the Warriors, like, oh, man, like you said, here we go.
Yeah.
Here they come again. But the Celtics outplayed them for 95% of this game.
Yeah.
And this is the first game in the series where I think that's been the case for one team.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a home game, the first game in Boston, which totally makes sense. Did you hear the comments about Draymond Green's podcast and maybe how that could have some implications on the series? I know after game 2 on his podcast, he basically broke down how they're guarding a bunch of these guys on the Celtics and what they do to take them off their game. Not that the Celtics watch that podcast, but maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
It's in the public domain now, right? Kerr said he didn't seem to be concerned, but he also doesn't watch the podcast either. But it's funny, we were just talking about, I think it was last week, about TJ McCollum becoming a full-time analyst on top of his position as a professional basketball player. Mm-hmm. Draymond Green's doing it on his own. Originally, when he started his podcast, he was going to have one episode a week, but now he's doing one episode after every single game. Could this maybe have some effect on him or on the team?
Well, could it? Yeah, definitely. If he's, I'll be honest, I don't watch Draymond's podcast, so I haven't heard the exact specific comments he makes as it pertains to this series and guarding individual players and all that stuff. But if he's saying, very tactical things or schematic things, and anybody on Boston's team watches it, that could definitely give them an advantage. The question is how much of an advantage, right? But it could definitely help.
He says he's never said anything on there that he wouldn't say in a post-game press conference. And I don't know if I exactly believe that. On one hand, I'm like, it's Draymond Green. He says whatever he wants. And then on the other hand is like, okay, having a podcast myself, I understand that there's some things I would say on this podcast that I wouldn't say if, let's say, I worked for a team or I was in the league, right? Like, I have a little bit more freedom here. I don't know if he's exercising that at all, but it's just an interesting thing to throw in there. And one more distraction for a guy that did not seem to be fully invested in Game 3.
Yeah.
Mike wants to talk about this flagrant foul, and I want to talk about it too, because I think it was quite interesting. Curry goes up for the 3. Al Horford closes out. They both, in my opinion, moved forward, collided. It was called a flagrant foul on Al Horford. Curry made the 3, so it ended up turning, I think, into a 5-point swing, and they got possession.
It was a 7-point possession in total.
Yeah, and
they got the
ball
4-point play, had possession, and then hit another 3 right after it.
And they got the technical, right?
Yeah, it's the and one, which is the 4-point play on the 3, but it's a flagrant foul, so it's you retain possession, and then they hit another 3.
But didn't they get a technical shot also?
No.
No?
No, it's 2 shots to make 1 plus the ball. Okay.
So, yeah, what a crazy swing in the game. But what are your thoughts on that flagrant foul? Was it a foul? Was it a flagrant foul?
Oh, it's definitely a foul. It's not a flagrant foul, in my opinion. But the problem is the way that the rules have changed and been written over the past couple years. The Zaza Pachulia rule, basically, right?
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
That's what they're going to call now, especially when they have to go to the replay every time now. Anytime there's a question of it being a flagrant foul, they automatically go to review it. And if you slow it down and look at it 17 times in a row, you can see the way the rule is written. If you come down in a player's airspace, landing space, as they're a jump shooter, that is now defined as a flagrant foul. So I disagree with the rule, but that's the rule.
Did it look to you like Curry moved forward a little bit? Like where is his airspace as far as a landing area? Like, is it where he jumps from, or is it where he's like projected to land?
The more important part is how much ground Al Horford had to cover to close out. That's why they met at the point of impact, because Horford is, trying desperately to get out there on the best shooter in the world to put a hand up.
Yeah.
And yes, Curry does move forward a little bit in his jump shot, but Al Horford's momentum, because he has to cover so much ground on the closeout, is why they end up in the same spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a BS call personally. I think it was a foul for sure. But at the same time, it's like, what is Al Horford supposed to do? Right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
He wasn't trying to hurt Curry. He wasn't
No,
trying to
he's
hit
not.
Curry.
Well,
he
and
was
again,
literally trying to block the shot.
That's the tough thing about this rule, right? Is that in Zaza's case, a lot of people think he was trying to do that.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10 in a regular game, instances like this happen a lot, and the defender is not intentionally trying to hurt somebody. They're just trying to get a contest on the shot. Or in Horford's case, maybe even a deflection because he's got such a size advantage, right? So
the Zaza one's different.
It's difficult. Yeah.
It's different. That was like a much closer space. He basically kicked one leg out, didn't move both feet up, and I didn't think he even had a chance to block the shot. But the Horford one for me is much different. The crazy thing about the whole situation for me is the fact that Horford is the one that lands on Curry later in the game and hurts him.
Yeah.
In basically like a scramble for a loose ball.
Yeah, which again, that happens.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
So it's unfortunate. Like I said, I disagree with the rule. I disagree that is a flagrant foul. I mean, to me, a flagrant foul, there's got to be intent. There's got to be a non-basketball play, basically, and that is a basketball play.
I mean, we see guys now go for the block, trying to intentionally block the ball and hitting the guy in the head, and they call it a flagrant foul.
Right. Which again, it's the way the rule is written.
Yeah.
Any contact, unnecessary or excessive contact to the head or neck region, it results in a flagrant foul. So
you're saying today's NBA is soft, Calvin? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's
the
not
80s and
saying.
90s. They weren't calling those
That's
things.
not what I'm saying.
We had a fun debate on yesterday's show talking about 80s, 90s players versus today's players. Yeah, I guess you could throw 2000s players in there too, but quite different.
Yes.
Quite different in a lot of different categories: money, fame, rules, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
The Zaza one was completely different because Kawhi Leonard was straight up. Yeah, I agree, 100%. But Progressive G, I think you and I also are kind of Warrior haters, so we're a little mixed in our views on this for sure. But yeah, interesting play there. What do you think about Draymond fouling out in this game?
It really hurts the Warriors. Like, there are some of his fouls where, it happens. He's a smaller guy trying to bang inside with bigger players, or he has to come out and guard, Tatum on the perimeter, and he's too slow to stay with him, so he has to reach, something like that. But then, as I mentioned before, you get the fouls where it's like he sees Marcus Smart has the ball on the ground in the middle of everybody, so instead of trying to run around him and tie him up for a jump ball, his decision is to just level him completely to the floor. That's a flagrant foul. That's a technical or something, None of this Al Horford stuff. It's Draymond Green. So, yeah, it's the Warriors had foul problems all over the place, not just Draymond. Steph Curry was in foul trouble for pretty much the entire game.
Yeah. Yeah, Draymond Green is a very polarizing player. If you're a Warriors fan, you love him, right? Except maybe when he gets ejected or fouls out, and then you're like, come on, Draymond.
Gets suspended for Game 5 of the finals.
Yeah, we need you. But the way he's going here, he could potentially be suspended for Game 5 again.
Yeah.
Who knows?
A couple more tackles.
If they get blown out in
loss.
one of these other games, especially if it's in Boston, Draymond's going to go nuts.
Yeah, I could see that.
He's going to go crazy. So wild. Well, anything else you want to say on this game? Because we got a busy show. And for you Kings fans out there, we're actually going to be live in about an hour and 15 on Royal Rebound. So make sure you guys check that out afterwards.
I think the Warriors have to seriously consider giving Jonathan Kuminga some minutes.
Okay.
I love that guy. I think he's incredibly talented. I would be interested to talk to Steve Kerr and see what his thoughts are on, do you think he's not ready for this stage, or is it something that Boston does in particular, why you don't want to play him? But like I said before, Draymond right now, it's kind of like what we were talking about with Kyle Lowry. Is he hurting or helping the team more.
Yep.
Draymond looks like he's hurting the team more than he's helping them right now. And Kuminga is a guy that has a lot of the same skill set, is a little bit bigger than Draymond, much younger, much more athletic. I would give him some run and see if it helps at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough for the Warriors. They're really going really small.
They are. Well,
series.
that's what they've done
Yeah.
for years. I mean, before they had Kevin Durant, that's what they did.
But
too.
like Looney's, he only played 17 minutes in this game. Draymond Green played 35 minutes, but he fouled out and was very inefficient, not very effective. But other than that, I mean, you had 21 minutes for Otto Porter Jr. off the bench, 24 for Jordan Poole, and then the rest of these are basically guards. Kuminga got 2 minutes. Bjelica got 3 minutes. Like, this is an extremely, extremely small team.
Yes.
And would you want to give maybe Looney some more minutes if you're putting a guy like Kuminga out there, or maybe an Otto Porter or Iguodala instead of Draymond?
That's tough. I mean, because I love Looney, and he's been so good for them, especially on the offensive glass. But again, the fact that the Celtics are doubling down with 2 big men, that had a huge impact on how the Warriors were able to attack the offensive glass. When the Warriors have been at their best in this series, they've forced turnovers, gotten out in transition, killed it on the offensive glass, not just by getting an offensive rebound, but the Warriors are one of the best teams maybe ever at, and it helps obviously when you have 2 of the greatest shooters of all time. But the fact that those guys are so good at relocating off of an offensive rebound, and they immediately look for whoever it is, whether it's Poole or Clay or Steph, they find them so quickly. They almost know where they're going to be without even looking. And the Warriors just punish teams so much on that because they get a wide open 3-point look. They didn't get either of those opportunities very much last night, and that's why they were trailing for most of the game. They make little runs and get back in it, but because Boston is so sound in the half-court defense, they make 2 or 3 stops in a row, and then Golden State had trouble covering any ground last night. I mean, Marcus Smart hit a bunch of really big threes in the fourth quarter, and Jaylen Brown was just, I can't overstate how good he was last night. That one possession with, I think there's like 4 minutes and 40 seconds left in the fourth quarter. He's on Klay Thompson on the perimeter, completely takes away what Klay wants to do. He gives him every move. Klay dishes it, makes one of those patented cuts right after the pass that they get layup after layup on all the time. Brown recovers to make a huge block. He was so good for them last night.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, this Warriors team, there's definitely like a head of the snake, right? Like, we would both agree that's Steph Curry. And you take Curry out of his game, it really changes what this Warriors team has to do or does. Versus like Boston, I'm not really sure who the head of the snake is. Like, maybe you would say Jason Tatum is the best player on the team, but we've seen moments where he hasn't played that well or hasn't played up to his expectations. And then you have a guy like Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown that are able to just kind of jump in and just take the lead. Jaylen Brown is my favorite from the Boston Celtics as far as finals MVP at this point. So just having that luxury of like Tatum, Brown, maybe Smart, maybe Horford, like you have so many different options. I think it really makes it tough on Golden State.
Definitely. And I think that's a clear example of where these 2 teams are at in their time window, right? Like Boston is still ascending, both as a team and as individual players. You know, that's why the debate is so good right now about who's better, Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. They haven't even entered their primes yet, really.
Pretty wild.
And Golden State, on the other side of the coin, is that team that is starting to still try to stay in the prime, but they're slowly leaving it. So
yeah, and they're kind of in that like, we want to be good now and we want to be good in the future. So they're like, we have old aging players. We have a lot of young talent, but it's kind of what you and I talked about. Who's that bridge, right? Like, who is the bridge keeping them all together? It's not Draymond Green at this point, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
It's not. What's up, Key Kings? Good to see you here. We're going to be live on Royal Rebounds in about an hour talking about all things Sacramento Kings, so make sure you join us for that. Last thing before we move on, adjustments that Golden State should make moving into Game 4.
This is tough because I'm not really sure what else they can do, to be honest with you. I mean, again, what they need to do, or when they've played their best in this series, they've forced Boston into some bad turnovers. They've gotten out in transition, offensive rebounds, things like that, and they were able to get into the paint and score. In this game, this game 3 was the biggest disparity in points in the paint so far in this series. Boston 52, Golden State 26. The Warriors are a team that thrives on outscoring their opponent in the paint, especially for a team that plays small. Mm-hmm. And if Boston's going to keep these two big guys in there, that's the luxury of having Robert Williams, right? Because he's not the guy they asked to go extend himself on the perimeter and guard smaller players. That's Al Horford, who one of the biggest topics in this series has been, are the Celtics playing the right coverage on Curry in the pick and roll? Because a lot of times they're using a drop coverage and letting him get an open look for three, and he's taken full advantage of that. But the plus side for Boston is they're living with that and limiting everybody else and taking away the paint. With Robert Williams back there patrolling, we saw he had that big block on Curry in the second half on that floater. So, and the reason I say the Warriors are in trouble is because finally Klay Thompson got going. Andrew Wiggins played a better game. Didn't have a phenomenal game by any stretch, but he played a better game offensively, and they still lose by 16.
Yeah, it's tough. Mike says Draymond is the new buddy. That's a tough one. For me, the key for the Warriors is going to be really difficult because Steph Curry and his health and what that means for them. But if I'm the Warriors, I need to pick up the pace. I need to run Boston out of the gym. I think the only way they get back in this series is if they just up the tempo, they double down on the small lineup, and they just try and run them out of the gym, get a bunch of transition buckets, more points in the paint, like you said. Whatever you can do to not allow Boston to get set in its half-court defense, I think is an advantage for Golden State.
Absolutely.
But having Curry dealing with an injured foot does not allow them to potentially just keep running all game long. So it's going to be very tough for them.
Well, and it's how you create those opportunities also. The best and easiest way to do that is off of a turnover or a missed field goal, right? And Boston didn't have very many of either of those yesterday. They shot really well, and they didn't turn the ball over. They were much more deliberate with their decision-making, their passing. Jason Tatum, for as great or as all the accolades that people are talking about Jaylen Brown, and he deserves them. He played great. I think Jason Tatum is not getting enough praise in this series for the way that he's played. He's really taken it on himself to be just the solid rock for this team. Like, he's not trying to overextend himself or do too much. He's making the right reads. He's taking opportunities when they're there in terms of scoring. He was really great around the rim yesterday, taking advantage of smaller defenders. But it's his ability to find other guys on this team, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. That's what's keeping them alive without the turnovers. And then Boston, on the other hand, was the better team off of a made basket or an out-of-bounds play or something like that, looking to press the issue and force the ball up the court. They caught the Warriors napping a ton of times yesterday. So they're beating the Warriors at their own game right now, from what you're saying.
Yeah, Boston played much better at home. Do you think this basket height might have had anything to do with this game? We talked about it yesterday. Apparently, the Golden State Warriors basket was higher than it was supposed to be in pregame warmups. They went to adjust it. You see any conspiracy theories there in what Boston's trying to do to throw them off their game?
No. I mean, even if they were trying
to
throw them off their game, it didn't work, right? Because the Warriors measured the rim, and they found out it was over 10 feet.
Maybe it's in their head now. They're like, what's going on? Why did they take all the batteries out of our remotes in the locker room?
Yeah.
Why does our water taste weird? What is going on here? All the cushions are off of our chairs. What is going on? They turned the AC on in the locker room.
When you've been to 6 finals in 8 years, you can look past all that stuff, I think, pretty easily.
Yes, I agree. Well, in continuing my horrible picks for this offseason, because whenever I pick a team, they lose, and whenever I don't pick them, they win. I'm taking Golden State in Game 4, Calvin. How about you?
I don't know, man.
And that means Boston's winning Game 4 for you guys.
I expected this series to be a long series, so that thought makes me want to pick the Warriors to have a bounce back game and steal one in Boston and even things up. But not knowing how bad Curry's foot is going to be and just watching the way this game unfolded, even when Golden State made their runs, Boston came right back with a 7-0 or 10-2, whatever it was, run to answer and pull away again. And it's the supporting cast for me. Like, Curry and Thompson were good in this game, but they didn't get a lot of help from anybody else. Mm-hmm. The Celtics their whole starting lineup pretty much went crazy. Robert Williams didn't blow anybody away statistically, but Al Horford and Marcus Smart were much, much better. And when those two guys are hitting shots and being effective on offense, with how good Boston is defensively, they're almost impossible to beat. Mm-hmm. So that makes me want to pick Boston. I will take Boston at home again. Okay. To take a commanding 3-1 lead.
Game 4 is such an integral game. It is so important because, and I'm sure Kerr is telling his players this, probably just the younger guys. I'm sure Draymond Green and all these guys are telling this, is like, if Golden State wins Game 4, they're literally going back home with home court advantage and a tied series.
They're definitely not out of it.
They basically, yesterday's game does not matter if they are able to win on Friday.
No. Yesterday's game doesn't matter from the Warriors standpoint at all anymore. You have to put that game behind you.
But if Boston wins Game 4, they could close the Warriors out in Golden State.
Yeah.
So Game 4 is really, really important. And that game's on Friday. So hopefully you guys will all be available to watch that game. Like I said at the start of the show, still trying to figure out what our schedule is going to be like on Friday, whether we go live on Friday or maybe we do Saturday. But we'll keep you guys posted. Just pay attention to our Twitter account, bball@the_bar. Calvin will have all the updates posted there. All right, so we both agree that Boston's winning on Friday, right?
Do we?
I mean, I'm picking Golden State because
you're defaulting to...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying one of those techniques, You go left to go right.
Yeah. I would like to see more games here, but, if Boston wins tomorrow, we might not be looking at a very long series.
Wow. Robert Williams is plus 21. Calvin doesn't like the plus minus, but it's useful in some circumstances.
It's not my favorite stat, but
yeah, it's a tough one. All right, moving on here. Let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. They're in the news again, not for blowing their leads this time. This time is actually giving them, I guess, an out, you would say. Apparently, the Suns were dealing with a COVID outbreak during the last series. 6 personnel and 1 player tested positive either right before or right after Game 7. Calvin, what are your thoughts here?
My thoughts are exactly that this sounds like an excuse. Did it have an effect on the team? Yeah, I'm sure it had to have had an effect.
Ask the Clippers.
But, well, yes, but that's the difference, though. The Clippers lost their best player. Without Kawhi because he was already not going to play, right?
Yeah.
Chris Paul played in Game 7, yes.
We don't know if he was sick or not.
Devin Booker played in Game 7, yes.
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton played in Game 7, yes. Maybe not as much as you would have wanted him to play, but he played. Mikal Bridges played in Game 7, right? So those guys were all on the court, and it's just like whether it's an injury or an illness, if you suit up, are you going to be affected depending on the severity of your injury, illness, and who you are and how you deal with pain and sickness and all that stuff? Yes, you are. But like any athlete will tell you, if you put on the uniform and you step on the floor or the field,
Michael Jordan flu game,
you're there. You got to perform. So I don't buy too much into this. Oh, the Suns had, assistant coaches and trainers and whatever that were out with COVID. That's why they got blown out in Game 7. They just didn't play well enough.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it was Game 3 when you really started to notice a difference in the team, right? They won the first 2 games, then they lost 2 in a row in Dallas, and then just, they won one more game after that, but they didn't look the same. They looked like something had happened, right? We were trying to figure out what it was, if it was Chris Paul, if it was like team chemistry, or if there was some kind of event going on, or what happened, but they just looked like a completely different team. I don't want to speculate anything here and say that teams weren't testing and all this stuff, but COVID outbreak for the entire team could answer some of those questions as far as like why they didn't look prepared, why they looked tired, why they didn't look like full energy. I'm not going to say that's what happened, but it would help explain some of those things.
It helps, but again, it just sounds like an excuse to me.
Yeah. And then, like, wouldn't we have seen
somebody
on the Mavericks
here.
get it?
They were up 2-0 in this series. That series should not have gone to a Game 7. They let the Mavericks get back into that, and then, we've got COVID. That's why we lost Game 7.
Yeah, and we don't even know who leaked this report or what's going on. I guess the NBA is investigating to see if they were following testing protocols. But pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
Progressive G, I'm curious to know why you think that the plus-minus stat is more useful in an NBA Finals game as opposed to another playoff game or any game, for that matter.
And Robert Williams will be the next, or could be, the next Ben Wallace.
I like that comparison, actually. I like that comparison a lot.
I love Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace was so much fun to watch. Just a guy that, like, yes, there was a lot of things that Ben Wallace couldn't do, but I like players like that, like Dennis Rodman, where it's like you were so good at the things you could do that people didn't care about the things you couldn't do.
Right.
That's how good you were. You were that much of a specialist. It was really, really cool to watch. So, Suns COVID outbreak doesn't matter, right? Not notable.
Not to me, anyway.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it mattered. It would matter if Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton had to miss the game.
Yeah.
Because they were out with COVID.
Well, Chris Paul's a little older. You know, they say older people are more affected by COVID.
He's not that old. Come on, man.
He's looking pretty old out there. All right, moving on. LeBron James is in the news again. This time it's not for FOMO, for not being in the NBA playoffs. This time he's talking about owning an NBA team, which...
Not the first time he's talked about that.
We just found out like a few days ago he's officially a billionaire. And what was the first thing we talked about? What team is he going to buy?
Yeah.
And we went and we looked down the whole list and we're like, could he afford this team? Could he afford this team? He didn't have enough money for any of those teams outright. LeBron, the ultimate problem solver, might have solved his own problem, Calvin. LeBron wants an expansion team, and he wants it to be in...
Viva Las Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas. How incredible is that? So we've already heard Adam Silver, David Stern, rest in peace. We've already seen Adam Silver talk about league expansion and potentially naming 2 potential expansion teams. It looks like one of those teams is already taken. LeBron's got dibs on it. What does that mean?
Well, I don't think he has dibs on it. But look, LeBron is a smart guy. I mean, there's no other way for me to say it. It makes a lot of sense to own an NBA franchise from a financial standpoint.
Yes.
And the potential, or, we've seen since Vegas got a hockey team and now a football team that they have absolutely blown up. And so it makes total sense to want the NBA franchise that's going to be in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
It's a great move.
I think everyone was worried about if a team was in Vegas that there would be some kind of illegal things or gambling or something.
Sports betting is legal now.
Yeah, we've had 2 teams.
Bet us.
We've had 2 teams that have moved to Vegas, and they have shown us that it's going to be okay. Vegas isn't that bad.
Oh, it's better than okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I still haven't been to see a Vegas Golden Knights game, but I know people that have, and I know a lot of really big hockey fans, and they say that is the best place you can go to watch a hockey game.
We should have gone when we were there. We should have gone.
We should have.
We were too busy with those drinks with the long straws and all this. Man, that was a fun time. But as Calvin mentioned, we are sponsored by BetUs. So please, if you are a sports bettor, go in the description down below. There is a link to sign up with BetUs. You get 125% on your first deposit. And if you need any advice, not financial advice, but just fun gambling advice, feel free to let us know in the chat what you have your eyes on. I think that'd be really cool, Calvin, to have LeBron owning a team in Las Vegas. I think it would be pretty awesome. The only thing I could really think of is like, okay, well, expansion, it takes a few years, right? And Michael Jordan has an expansion team, right? Maybe that's where LeBron got the idea. But LeBron's career is seeming to come to an end here pretty soon. Could this be a lined up where it's like LeBron plays 2 or 3 more years with the Lakers and then he retires to own his own team?
Perhaps.
Storybook ending?
Perhaps. LeBron, is one of a very select few group of people on this earth that kind of controls his own destiny at this point. Maybe not in terms of like winning championships or anything like that, but everything he does after basketball, the world's at his fingertips.
Can he get the Vegas team going in time to draft Bronny James?
I don't think that's going to... Well, a lot of that depends on the league, right? LeBron doesn't have very much control over when the league expands and adds these teams.
But he could tell Bronny, hey, go back to school 1 more year, man. Go back to school for 2 more years. I'm working on something over here.
He could very much. But he also said he wants to play with Bronny.
True.
In that scenario, you don't want him to go back to school. You want him to get in there as quickly as he can.
Bronny signs or gets drafted by the Lakers, plays 1 year with LeBron, and then LeBron gets his own team and trades for him?
Drafts or expansion drafts Bronny off of the...
Wow. That would be crazy. But, hey, we're in the crazy new future. I swear, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, half the things that are going on nowadays blew my mind. So it's definitely possible. All right, Calvin, let's jump here into the mock draft. I said a mock draft because there's so many different ones. I'm going off Tankathon here, one of my favorite websites, because I'm a Kings fan, and we're always tanking, or at least in the lottery. So I kind of want to go over the top 5 picks here, get your thoughts on each of these players, and then we'll wrap up the show with Q&A because we have to get on Royal Rebounds for some Kings coverage. So this is the draft or the mock draft that you and I have been looking at for the past week and a half, maybe 2 weeks or so. There hasn't been much movement lately. We got the Magic drafting Jabari Smith, number 1. Chet Holmgren going number 2 to Oklahoma City. Paulo Banchero going 3rd to the Rockets. Jaden Ivey going 4th to the Sacramento Kings. And Shaedon Sharpe is projected at pick number 5 to the Detroit Pistons. Let's talk about pick number 1, Calvin. Is it a lock? Is it Jabari Smith? Is he the perfect player for the Orlando Magic?
It's definitely not a lock. I think if you want to continue down the betting route, he is the odds-on favorite right now. I think he's like minus 300 to go number 1. And typically the guy that ends up being the odds favorite does end up getting drafted number 1. And it does make a lot of sense for Orlando to take him. But, as we've seen plenty of times in any professional sports league draft, there could be a shakeup. They could decide to go with Holmgren instead. I think it's very important to note here that the consensus top 2 picks are similar types of players. I mean, one, they definitely have different skill sets when you really break it down, but they're both big guys that can shoot it really well and project to be really solid defenders. One better maybe on the perimeter and one better as a rim protector, but both project to be really solid defenders. So that kind of throws more question into this. It's like, it's more about a fit for the team than it is which individual player do you want, because both of them possess a lot of the same skills. It still seems to be that Jabari Smith is the favorite, though, to go number one.
I like Jabari Smith a lot. I was up late last night watching a bunch of his footage, and I was like, dude, if this guy falls to 2 or 3, somebody's getting an absolute stud. His perimeter defense is incredible, shoots the ball really well, like you mentioned. The dude reminds me a little bit of a Jaren Jackson Jr. Do you have a guy that he reminds you of?
Well, he's a much better shooter than Jaren Jackson. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is a streaky shooter. He can get hot. But Jabari Smith's form for a guy at 6'10" is picture perfect. He's got a beautiful turnaround fadeaway as well. I don't know. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a much better interior defender too.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, that's the thing with
I see
Jabari
a little
Smith,
bit of a comparison,
right?
there,
He played with what, Walker Kessler?
Yeah,
who was like leading in blocks. So like he didn't really get a lot of opportunities to be the main guy inside.
That's true. I also don't. I think because he's able to, for a guy at 6'10" with that wingspan and able to move his feet as well as he does, you'd rather have him, guarding wing players as opposed to trying to hang back and be a rim protector. I think he's better served outside, but just like he is offensively, where his game has to grow is shot creation, becoming more of the go-to guy. Right now, he's a beautiful spot-up shooter, and if you get him the ball within the offense, on a catch-and-shoot situation, he knocks down threes, over 40% of the time. But to take that next step and be an elite player or the number one pick in the draft, the type of player that we think deserves that calling, he's got to add more off the dribble or post moves, just more ways to create his own shot.
Yeah, the only concerns I really had about him was decision-making ability and passing, because he threw a lot of questionable passes. Yes. But do you have any player comparison?
I'll have to think more about that.
Okay, we'll definitely come back there. All right, number 2, let's talk about Chet Holmgren. Very, very exciting prospect. Average 18.9 points per game, 13.3 rebounds, 2.6 assists, and an amazing 4.9 blocks per game, and 1.1 steals last season for Gonzaga. Incredible player. It says he's listed at 7 foot. Everything I was reading was saying that he's like 7'2" with like a 7'6" wingspan.
Yeah.
And I don't remember his reach. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's enormous.
But this guy, to me, seems like the highest risk and the highest reward as far as these top like 4 or 5 guys here. He's skinny. We hear all the people talking about he needs to fill out. He's less than 200 pounds, all this stuff. They said that about KD. They said that about Brandon Ingram, that these guys were too skinny and they were going to last in the league. So we've definitely seen guys that have made it work. Chet's a very strong guy, so we've seen him be very effective inside. But this dude, for me, like I said, is just the highest risk, highest reward. He's like a unicorn. He's amazing at what he can do, and he can do so many different things. But I do have some concerns with his game. What about you?
Well, I think there are a lot of players, or several players in this draft, that would be much more of a high-risk pick than Chet Holmgren.
In the top 5?
Yes. Jaden Ivey would be one of them.
Okay.
Shaedon Sharpe would be another one. This guy, this really, for me, the only concern is the size. And I only say that as a concern because, we saw in a couple matchups this year, I think they played Memphis, and Jalen Duren, who is a beast of a man, really, really took advantage of him on the block inside. And that's the type of player that he's going to play against every day in the NBA. Now, his skill set also gives him the ability to find ways around that, right? Like, he's good enough that he can extend on the perimeter, moves his feet really well. He's a really good ball handler and passer for a guy over 7 feet. Mm-hmm. I think the comparison for him is actually Kevin Durant. He's a little bit bigger and a better shot blocker than Kevin Durant, but in terms of what they do offensively, there are very few people that size that can dribble the ball and pull up and shoot with a good-looking jump shot like those two guys can. So this guy, to me, he's clearly the top prospect in this draft. And if he falls to 2, whether or not Oklahoma City stays there at 2, whoever ends up picking at that spot is going to get a really, really legit player.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an incredible player as well. Just the health concerns with the size is my only concern, which can be a huge concern, right? Because we talk about the best ability
bull, right?
Is availability. So
that guy has actually a lot of the same skill set as Chet Holmgren. Bull does.
Yep.
Really good ball handler for somebody that size, good outside shooter, good shot blocker, but his problem has been that he can't stay on the court. So,
yeah, I think he's a free agent this offseason also. All right, let's dive into the third prospect from Duke, Paulo Banchero, 6'10", power forward. Take it away, Cal.
Banchero might be the most skilled offensive player, especially for the big men in this whole class. Like he makes it look effortless at times. He can run an offense at 6'10", great ball handler, beautiful shot, really, really skilled offensive player. The question marks with him are all on the defensive end of the floor. It's things like effort. A lot of the stuff that we talked about with Anthony Edwards coming out, has definitely the athletic ability, the talent, the capability to be a really good two-way player, but just doesn't always show the awareness and the intensity and effort 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you get that out of him? But I think he's easily the third best player in this class, and it should be a very simple choice for Houston at 3 with who they take.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though I've heard some rumors that they like Jaden Ivey a lot.
Okay.
And they're starting to lean. I've heard Oklahoma City likes Jaden Ivey as well, so which could be a reason why you have this rumor that they're moving down to 4 and the Kings up to 2 because they think Ivey might be there at 4 instead.
Interesting. Yeah, Banchero is definitely the most NBA-ready prospect out of these top 3 guys, in my opinion. I think he's got the body to play 82 games next season. Yep. I saw somebody, I don't remember who it was, Alvin or somebody was comparing him to a LeBron James-type body in terms of like his readiness and ability to play. Not as good of a three-point shooter as the other 2 guys that we just talked about. Yeah. But I do like him.
Can shoot it, but
yeah, I do like him. I think he'll have a productive NBA career. But yeah, I see him as kind of like the second tier past Smith and Holmgren.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of good guys in this draft. Let's talk about Jaden Ivey. He's next.
Incredibly versatile. I mean, it just shows you the direction that the NBA is going in terms of talent, right? Like all these guys, especially the wings in this class, like. Their ability to guard positions 1 through 4, some of them 1 through 5 in today's NBA. They can shoot from outside. They can play inside. They move well off the ball. Like it's just a really, really versatile type player that's available in this class.
Yeah, next up is Jaden Ivey. He's projected to go to the Sacramento Kings with pick number 4. He's the oldest of the 4 prospects we've discussed so far. At 20 years of age, 19.8 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Has played incredible in college. He seems to be a little bit more ball dominant than some of the other guards that I've seen. What are your thoughts on Jaden Ivey?
Incredible athlete. Like you mentioned, yes, maybe a little more ball dominant. Needs it. If he was to go to a team that had a legit point guard or a guy that handles the ball predominantly for them, he would definitely have to become a better catch and shoot player. But he cuts really well. He moves well without the ball, and that athletic ability, is kind of the trump card there, right? Mm-hmm. Not for somebody who is one of the top 2 or 3 athletes in the draft. He's not an elite defender yet, certainly has the capability to do so, but in order for him to come out being, an all-star type level player from this class, he's got to be a better defender overall.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of great highlights to watch of Jaden's. Not a lot of things he can't do on the offensive end of the floor. Like to see him shoot the 3 ball a little bit better, but he's played incredibly well, and I think he is well deserving of 3 through 5 maybe pick wise.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think there are a lot of NBA executives out there that consider him the third best player in this draft, with perhaps some of the highest upside.
And apparently he doesn't want to go to Sacramento or Oklahoma City. So interesting there.
Because no one cares about that.
He prefers.
That's what he says.
He prefers to go to Detroit at pick number 5 for some reason. Speaking of Detroit, they do have the 5th pick, and they are projected to take Shaedon Sharpe out of Kentucky, although he did not play at Kentucky. You want to fill us in here, Cal?
Well, he didn't actually step on the floor during an actual game for Kentucky. He was part of the team, but Shaedon Sharpe, again, this might be one of the highest upsides in the draft. It's also maybe the biggest mystery in the draft. An incredibly athletic wing player with tons of potential, one of the younger players in this draft too, so there's all the upside available. Great outside shooter. This is one of those like swing for the fences type picks if you take Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, this guy, sky's the limit is like you said.
Because you could hit a grand slam here, but you could also strike out.
Yeah, he could be the best player on your team in 2 years, or he could be off your team in 2 years. Drafting a guy that hasn't played in a while is always difficult. And, we talk about what translates from college to the NBA. Well, what translates from high school to the NBA, right? Because we haven't really seen much out of this guy. But the things we have seen out of him are really, really incredible.
Yeah, and he had some really good workouts, post the college season and leading up to the combine and all that stuff. So he's definitely done enough to impress some people. But the thing about this draft is picks 3 through 10, really. There's a lot of the same type of player available. Mm-hmm. And all of these guys, while some of them have an incredible amount of potential, there's no clear-cut favorite in here. So it's really going to depend on the teams, the franchises picking, what they feel is the best fit for them. Are they going to go best available? Are they going to trade the pick? Anywhere from 4 to 8 right now, all 4 of those picks could change. Like the Indiana's rumored to be moving back in the draft. A lot of people like Malcolm Brogdon, so they're going after him. The Kings are rumored to be moving maybe up or down. No one knows what Detroit will do. The Blazers are also kind of a wild card there. So, and then New Orleans at 8 is one of the only teams that maybe doesn't have to draft a starter because their starting lineup is really solidified right now. So do they decide to move out of the top 10 as well?
Do you expect to see any movement here in the top 5, or would you
Yes.
predict any moves to happen here?
Yes, I would. I think the Kings are the number 1 pick right now for me in terms of a team that's going to move. I don't know whether it'll be up or down, but I expect them to not be in the 4 slot picking.
All right, and we'll talk about
Indiana
that.
would be another one for
And
me.
we'll talk about that on Royal Rebounds shortly, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We'll go over the entire Sacramento Kings roster. We'll talk about some of these draft picks and where they fit in, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. I think it's time for Q&A, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We got answers, and we're happy to discuss any of those things. Real quick for you, Calvin, have you seen Hustle?
I haven't, but I am definitely going to watch it. I just found out that it's out on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely watching it.
We watched it last night. It was pretty good.
I'm looking forward to it.
It was pretty good. Adam Sandler does a great job. Juan Hernan Gomez looks like an NBA superstar. It's amazing what they can do with camera work, because you're watching him and you're like,
a skilled player.
he is, but you're watching
they
it.
just grabbed a scrub, out of nowhere and said, "Hey, you come play basketball."
But you're watching it and you're like, wow, this guy is like the best guy in the league. He's incredible. He's going to take the league by storm. Not to spoil it, because it's a real life story and we already know what happens. Mm-hmm. He ends up on the Boston Celtics, who are in the finals now. But he's not on the Boston Celtics anymore because he just got traded. So
he's been moved around a few times.
Also, Boban's in the movie as well. So
did you like Anthony Edwards' performance? Everybody's been raving about how good he was.
Yeah, he killed it. And I was like, that's Anthony Edwards. I was like, what is he doing in here? He's a complete asshole, but he does a great job. Great job. He's a good asshole. We got to see Boban play. He was 22, he said. He's like, I am 22. And they see his son, who's super tall, and they're like, how old is your son? He's like 10. He's 10. Hilarious movie. If you guys have not seen it,
I bet Asha loved that.
make sure you check it out. Yeah, she definitely did. All right. Progressive G says, I'm just saying that if the plus and minus stat is going to be relevant, the NBA Finals is the most relevant place to use it because it is the most important basketball competition.
I agree with that. The problem with the plus or minus, though, is that people tend to fall into a trap and think about how the plus or minus evaluates an individual player. They put too much emphasis on it, in my opinion. Yes, you can learn something about a player from a plus or minus stat, but the thing about plus or minus is it's so dependent on the entire team.
Other guys.
What happens with the total team for the entire number of minutes that player is on the court. Yes, Robert Williams has a great impact defensively, which is why, your plus minus would be on the positive side because you're not allowing teams to score. But the reason it's so high is because other players score for him. Yeah. He's not the one that does all the scoring. So it's a give and take, but I think that it's that people put too much emphasis on it for an individual stat.
Yeah, and he goes on to say, I don't think the plus and minus is the end all, but it's one of many relevant metrics. Which, yeah, I get it is. And like Calvin's point, there's 4 other guys on the court at the same time on your team. And then there's 5 other guys on the other team. Like, if I'm playing against Kevin Durant, but I'm on the court every time he's on the bench, is that going to affect my plus minus? Yes. Versus, like, am I in control of when Kevin Durant's on the court? Even if I'm not guarding him, if I'm all the way on the other side of the court, he's on fire, that affects my plus minus. So it's a tough stat. I feel like plus minus is more effective when you use it in terms of like in a whole team perspective. Like the team's plus minus with the starters on the court versus the team's plus minus with the bench on the court. Or like you can see certain runs in games where it's like, okay, we're getting blown out here, and then we put Juan Hernan-Gomez on the court, and we're on a 15-0 run here, and his plus-minus is incredible, which not all that's him, but it definitely can show a little bit of that. So
sure.
Shout out to Juan Hernan-Gomez.
But I will agree with Progressive G in the sense of once you get to a stage like the NBA Finals, your rotation usually, for the most part, is much shorter. You're going to play your best players a ton of minutes, right? So that kind of evens out the discrepancies you might have in plus or minus, like you were talking about, where somebody like Lil Sweet Jose Grand Theft Alvarado comes in for 5 minutes and he picks Chris Paul's pocket twice and has like a plus 11 plus minus rating.
Killing it.
But he was only out there for 5 minutes.
Yeah, best plus minus there is. Also says you guys were right about Wiggins. He went for over 23, like Barry called yesterday.
I think a few guys all hit the overs. I said Klay Thompson. I don't know what the final line was, but I'm pretty sure he went over as well.
He was over. Yeah. The only guy that wasn't over was Draymond Green.
Yeah.
He was over the foul limit.
He was over the foul limit. That's right.
That's funny. All right, any last questions before we end the show here? We got to get all prepped and ready for Royal Rebound, so hopefully you guys will be able to join us on that in about 20 minutes. If you do not know about Royal Rebounds or have not been to the channel, all you need to do is just go to our channel here, Basketball at the Bar, click on the home button, and you will see a link to Royal Rebounds. It is our Sacramento Kings only channel. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, Royal Rebounds also has a podcast as well. So all you need to do is go to Amazon Music, iTunes, whatever you get your podcasts on, and type in Royal Rebounds, and you will find us there. All right, Calvin, I think we're wrapping it up. Any last words for you?
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the other channel.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. And please share this video and this channel with all your favorite basketball fans. We will see you all very soon. And don't forget to tip your bartender.